Yeah, so that's the sound of many mistakes leading up to this point. Yeah, it turns out sneaking back into someone else's house after a hangout, yes, sure, but still at 1 a.m. and 30 minutes after you had left, not the best idea. See, back in the day, I thought it would be a funny little idea to come back into a friend's house after one of our hangouts that we were having, and that wound out with me facing down a 45. I have an incredibly bad habit of endlessly watching TikTok. I'm sure a great many of you probably share in that. But turns out 30 minutes can pass real fast when you're watching TikTok. I, after this hangout, sat in my car and just kind of doom scrolled because I found, one TikTok that was linked to me, and I just kind of went from there. Didn't even notice that I had completely left my keys in this friend's house, and I was just doom scrolling. But luckily, whenever I did realize that I had abandoned my keys inside of his house, I went back to his door to find that it was cracked a little bit open, so somebody must have just left it ever so slightly ajar, and he just kind of locked it, thinking, okay, boom, it's locked, there we go, because it was pretty late. Like I said, this was around 1 a.m. So I, as the good friend that I am, pushed the door open and was like, well, time to scare the bejesus out of a good friend of mine. So yeah, I just kind of walked through his house completely unannounced and walked past his kid's room, who was luckily asleep because they had went to sleep some time ago. But I walked past his kid's room, past the bathroom, down this really long hallway, and his door was also slightly ajar. So I had the brilliant idea of just pushing it open, and my plan was that I was gonna just scare him, give him a little spook. Yeah, turns out doing that at this time in this way, not the best idea. Also turns out, had noticed every light in his house was off, and I had night vision, so I didn't notice because I'd been sitting in my car in the dark, just scrolling using night mode on my phone. So it was at its lowest light setting. So to him, I just looked like a black mass standing in his room after everyone else had left. To me, he just looked like a shiny barrel. We straight up just stared at each other like this for a good long period of time. It felt like it had to be at least like 30 minutes, but honestly, it was probably closer to 5, and my time was just kind of shifted by the fact that I was staring down death itself. But with that said, it did not change the fact that the entire time, you know how some people are reasonable, logical, they look at these situations and their first thought would be, hey, I need to tell this person that I am indeed their friend and that they do not need to blow my brains out. See, my apparent first reaction to this was, I need to make a funny joke and I need to get him to laugh at it. And that funny joke was awful. It was a garbage TikTok joke that I had just seen. That was Wendy's closes in 5 minutes. Dairy Queen closes in 5 minutes. Some variation of that joke closes in 5 minutes. Which, that's totally the best thing to be saying to somebody who's actively not shooting you just because behind you is the door to his kid's room and he's trying not to shoot them. The only reason I'm still standing at that point was literally because of that. But with that said, I did wind out giving in. My desire for a joke outweighed my will to live, which is alarming, all things considered. But I did look at him and was just like, oh well, here we go. I think the joke I landed on was dairy closes in 5 minutes, buddy. Doors unlocked. I left my keys. And just from the darkness, I start hearing him bust a gut. And he's like, my guy, if my kid wasn't on the other side of that door, you'd be gone. And I was like, yeah, but Dairy Queen though, we could make a run to Taco Bell. Like we could do these things. And at that point, I was safe enough. I just turned the light back on and just kind of looked at him. Yeah, he was completely bedtime. It had been a minute. I thought he'd be unwinding or something like that, or just kind of getting ready for bed. No, he was straight up in bed trying to actually sleep, ready to go, ready for tomorrow. But yeah, not great, not the best. But the rest of the night was luckily pretty uneventful. After that, after that near-death experience, I wound out just finding my keys on a counter that was in the front room. Apparently at some point I had taken them out, and he had just guided me out of the house as though we wasn't 2 inches away from me no longer existing. And then I just went on my happy little way. You know what's sad about this too? I wound out watching TikTok. whenever I sat outside again. Like, it was like a de-stress, decompress kind of thing. But yeah, I just kind of doom scrolled for another 10 minutes once I got out. But after that, he did make sure to get like a deadbolt though, so he could guarantee that his like door was closed, because he was in a pretty sketchy part of town. So it's like I could completely understand his reaction to that, because he was in like Section 8 housing. And again, that not the best way to be doing things is to get in there whenever it's in Section 8 housing. But moral of the story though, don't do that. Never do that. It's a terrible idea. Don't just walk into somebody's house. Even after a hangout, make sure to knock, because you don't know. This could be your final moments. You're just a shadow in the darkness to them.